Kitchen fires, bad smells, and oil without end. Deep-fried food may be one of life's great pleasures, but here's why you should never do it at home. It's one thing to walk into a dive bar and take in a whiff of cold fries. It's another thing entirely to have that smell lingering in your kitchen. Deep frying emits an odor that can infiltrate everything from home furnishing to clothes to even our own hair. And this smell lingers for more than just a moment or two. In fact, it can linger for 24 hours or longer. After all, there is a reason why people deep fry outside if they can. Still, there are a number of methods to reduce or offset the smell of deep frying at home, including boiling water and vinegar. And while there are some brands of deep fryer that purport to reduce smelliness, the reality is that once you start frying, your house is going to smell like the inside of a fryer, at least for a little while. While home deep fryers do exist, they tend to be bulky and difficult to store, and even compact models can be something of a luxury for those living in close quarters. It's for this reason that most people rely on a pot or Dutch oven instead, but this also invites no small amount of bulk to the party. If you're going this route, you'll need a pot or pan that's 5 inches deep at minimum, although a 2-gallon pot is really ideal. This is due to the fact that not only does deep frying require a significant amount of oil, but you also need to leave space for the displacement of that oil once the food to be fried is added. You've also got to consider any bubbling or spitting that could occur. And no, sorry, this isn't the part where you get to see the turkeys explode. That comes later. The long and short of it, deep frying for most home cooks means lugging out the big, bulky, expensive cast iron Dutch oven every time you want to cook even a small batch of fried food, and leaving it out until the oil has completely cooled. It's hardly a convenient process. Unlike roasting, grilling, or even air frying, deep frying demands your full and undivided attention. First off, you need to keep a close eye on the oil temperature, which has a tendency to plummet due to the relatively small amount of oil being used compared to a professional kitchen. Cold food added to hot oil leads to falling temperatures, and it's up to the cook to work quickly. In this situation, you have to bring the oil back up to the right heat level and keep close tabs on it for the duration of the cooking process. And since deep frying at home is usually going to be a batch cooking venture, you need to keep your eye on the prize for far longer than the cook time of a single serving of fries. In addition to a large Dutch oven or pot, deep frying requires no shortage of cooking equipment. First off, you need a thermometer to ensure you're keeping your oil at the proper temperature for the duration of cooking. After this, there's a veritable shopping list of accessories that you'll need to perfect your deep fry game. A spider for removing cooked food from the oil, a cooling rack on which to place the food fresh out of the fryer, and a cookie sheet to collect all of the oil that drips off the freshly fried food. You will also likely need wax paper or paper towels to collect or blot the excess oil from the food. So, until you've stocked up on all these accessories, the barrier to entry for deep frying at home is relatively high, not to mention pricey. Gadgets aren't the only thing you'll need to purchase in order to deep fry at home. There is also the question of the oil to contend with, and you'll need a lot of it, probably way more than you think, in fact.
God help us all.
Deep frying requires such a huge quantity of oil because the food you're frying needs to be totally submerged in the oil in order to fry evenly. Generally speaking, you're looking at somewhere between 9 and 16 cups of oil for a tabletop deep fryer. If you're going for the cast iron pot method, you'll probably need 4 to 6 cups of oil, which is still a lot, and you could require upwards of 2 gallons for a batch of fried chicken. Of course, the exact amount will vary according to the recipe and the frying vessel you choose, but either way, you'll need to stock up. Given the sheer amount of oil you need to use to deep fry at home, it may be reassuring to learn that you can actually repurpose it. As long as you filter oil after each use, you can reuse it somewhere between 4 and 8 times depending on the food you're deep frying. But just because you can doesn't mean you would, or even that you should. First off, you probably don't want to use the same oil to fry, say, chicken and donuts. This means that in a home setting, you're either holding onto multiple bottles of used oil or you're discarding them between uses. And discarding frying oil is a pain, whether it's the first time you've used it or the 8th. You certainly don't want to simply pour frying oil down the drain, where it can clog up the pipes and damage both your kitchen and the environment. Instead, it's best to wait until the oil is cooled before carefully pouring it into empty containers like plastic bottles or empty milk cartons and then throwing it away. Not only is this messy and time-consuming, but it means that potentially recyclable containers are going directly into the rubbish bin, which, again, isn't exactly environmentally friendly. From the spatter of frying oil to the transfer to the racks, deep frying is a messy endeavor indeed. The sputtering oil can easily dot your cooktop and your clothes with grimy hot oil, which is a pain even if it doesn't burn you. Look, we know what you're waiting for. Just hold on a little longer, all right? The draining step is no neater. The spider, cookie sheet, and rack you should be using will also end up covered in oil, as will the ground you cover getting it from point A to point B. Then, of course, there's the issue of either storing or discarding the used oil to contend with. In short, deep frying turns the merely annoying chore of doing the dishes after dinner into a Herculean effort. You've got to ask yourself, is it really worth it? It would be one thing if you were going to all of this effort to produce a truly extraordinary meal, but this is rarely the case when deep frying at home. The problem is one of scale. With an industrial-sized deep fryer, it's easy to cook an entire portion of fries in one fell swoop, ensuring that each member of the party gets a serving that's piping hot and crisp. But with the at-home method and the smaller size of the frying vessel, the more this applies. You'll almost always need to work in batches. While there certainly are ways around this, such as keeping batches warm in the oven while you proceed with the rest of the cooking, the reality is that not everyone at the table will get a perfectly crisp, fried fry. In other words, you've gone to all that work and effort for nothing. Or, if not nothing, at least a subpar iteration of the food you were craving.
Deep frying the turkey is one option today, but fire officials say it's one of the most dangerous things you can do on Thanksgiving.
Yes, it's finally turkey time. Deep frying isn't just a pain because of the effort involved, it can also be dangerous for home cooks. This should come as no surprise since you're essentially cooking with what amounts to a medieval weapon of war. While it's obviously not the goal, one clumsy nudge and this cooking technique could lead to serious injury for the cook, or any small children or pets in the vicinity. Deep frying large items, such as a turkey, can be particularly dangerous, with a high risk of tipping, overheating, or spilling. This all contributes to an increased risk of burns, injuries, and fires. Oil can be a big problem. Even just a small amount of oil coming into contact with burners can cause fires. But without a thermostat, deep fryers can even overheat the oil to the point that it literally combusts. And nobody wants that. It bears mentioning that, in addition to deep frying, the technique known as shallow frying is a popular way to achieve a crispy, crunchy crust on your favorite foods. And unlike deep frying, it's far better suited to the home kitchen. The difference between the two techniques basically comes down to the amount of oil you use. With deep frying, the entire food needs to be submerged in hot oil. But with shallow frying, only parts are submerged. A smaller quantity of oil means you can use a smaller pot or pan, doing away with some of the issues linked to deep frying. This method doesn't fix everything, though. The danger of burns still remain a concern. And some would argue that shallow frying is an even more hands-on endeavor than deep frying, since you turn each piece of food as it cooks. While the quantity of oil is smaller, it still needs to be discarded, which remains just as messy whether you're using a large or small quantity of fat. That said, shallow frying can be a good way of achieving similar results with less hassle. Whether you're deep frying or shallow frying, it should come as news to exactly no one that deep-fried foods aren't the pinnacle of all things healthy. It does bear repeating, though, because fried foods are bad for you in so many different ways.
Easy on the fried food, honey.
Oh, come on, I can eat whatever I want. I'm a teenager.
Fried foods are obviously high in calories. 100 grams of fried potatoes contains more than 3 times the calories of a baked potato of the same weight. Worse still, the calories come in the form of trans fats, a hydrogenated form of fat that is associated with an increased risk of diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. Indeed, according to one study in the medical journal Prostate, consumption of deep-fried foods may contribute to an increased risk of prostate cancer, specifically due to the formation of carcinogenic compounds during the frying process. Artificial trans fats may have been banned in the US back in 2014, but trans fats still form when oils are heated beyond a certain temperature. And while these kinds of trans fats haven't been linked to the same negative side effects as artificial trans fats, they're definitely still not good for you. If you need yet another reason to opt out of deep frying, your health and that of your family is a pretty good one. The idea that fried food may contribute to an increased risk of acne certainly makes sense, in theory. Greasy food must contribute to greasy skin, right? Well, the truth is more complicated than that, but it doesn't let fried food off the hook for zits either. Fried food does not directly cause acne, which can itself be linked to a number of issues including genetics, hormones, and stress. But a poor diet can make acne worse. The culprit, however, isn't the oil, but rather the carbohydrates. That said, battered and fried foods tend to have a higher glycemic index than foods that are just sautéed or roasted, and a study in the American Journal for Clinical Nutrition has shown that this high glycemic load may increase the likelihood that breakouts will occur. To add insult to injury, fried food can also lead to inflammation, which can make acne worse. So, while greasy food doesn't directly cause greasy skin, the relationship between the health of your skin and the healthiness of the foods you consume is real. And giving up fried foods in favor of low glycemic options is a good idea if you're concerned about breakouts.